I'm super excited to have this session with Noelle. It's going to be two friends chit-chatting on stage, so it's going to be great. If you want, I know the room is huge. Come on up. Noelle likes to take selfies with folks, so bring yourself up to the front of the room if you feel comfortable, or hang out where you're at. That's cool too. But I'm going to introduce Noelle to the stage, and then we're going to talk a little bit about AI committees and COEs at enterprises. This is something that I've been working on companies with for the last year and a half, since obviously this big boom. So I'm going to introduce Noelle to the stage. So with a profound passion for technology and its potential to transform business and society, Noelle Russell has dedicated her career to helping organizations uncover the possibilities artificial intelligence presents to their businesses and guiding them through the intricacies of AI adoption. In her daily work, Russell advises companies across industries on how to integrate emerging technologies, including AI, Web3, and the cloud, into their operations and workplace strategies. She's an award-winning technologist with an entrepreneurial spirit who has led innovative tech teams at Accenture, NPR, Microsoft, IBM, AWS, and Amazon Alexa, and is among the world's leading voices on data and AI literacy. Please help me welcome Noelle to the stage.
Thank you for coming. There's a lot of fierce competition, so
There really was.
Thank you.
This is cute.
Bruiser.
I love it. Tell me
We'll talk
about
more
Bruiser
about him
real
later.
quick.
Oh, you want
Yeah.
to do it right now?
Yeah, that's great.
All right. So Bruiser, I take on all my trips, and it's an analogy that I've come to become very close with. I have baby tigers everywhere. It's kind of bad, though. I don't know if any of you have ever loved a thing and then happen to mention it to someone, and then all you get is that forever. So that I'm in that mode with my baby tiger. It's okay. I love it. It's fine. I appreciate it. But it comes from an idea I actually learned in building the COE last year while I was at Accenture. We created this COE, and it was a culmination of everything I'd ever done in my career. So I was, my journey into AI started at Amazon Alexa. I was employee 10 there. I'm a builder. I built over 100 applications. It was a great ride. And then I went to Microsoft because then at Alexa, I thought it was all about natural language. Like no other AI existed. Jeff Bezos did a good job training my brain. And then I went to Microsoft. I'm like, holy mama, there's like 34 other model types out here. I mean, there's thousands now, but at the time I was like, oh my gosh, there's more than just voice. And so I went to Microsoft to help launch a bunch of research models into production. And I realized that these models are like baby tigers. They're like little baby tigers, super cute. Everyone wants to be around them. People want to take selfies. They're like, oh my gosh, your little AI model, it's so adorable. I want to be part of it. And no one is asking like, oh my gosh, look at those paws. How big are you going to be? Or, oh my gosh, look at those teeth, razor sharp. As a baby, what do you eat for dinner? Us, by the way. So it created this really like good reminder that at the beginning, these AI models are kind of cute. The projects are kind of cute, and we're in cute baby tiger phase right now in our industry where we're building these like small use cases. And the future, which I loved watching Sadie's data-driven approach because it is like, we know how the story is going to end. Like we watch this, Blockbuster, Netflix, like we've watched this happen in front of us. But we're still seeing companies kind of adopt baby tigers and not ask any questions. So that's why I talk about them now. And everybody understands the idea that little tigers become big tigers and big tigers can kill you. And so when you adopt that to an AI mindset, executives are like, oh, I totally get that. We should ask better questions. I'm like, done. Let's do it.
Everyone should take that back to work because it's a fun one. I love it. So let's get into COEs, the Center of Excellence, or committees, or steering committees, or councils. You know, everyone's got different names for it. Can you talk to us a little bit about what they are, why all of a sudden every company has one, and what they're comprised of?
Yes, I think it's good that companies have them. Not every company does. I do always remind myself when we're at conferences like this, like we are 1% of the 1%. I talk to organizations like the Adhesive and Sealant Convention, full of people who are building polymers. Like they do not have an AI steering committee yet. I mean, hopefully now they will because I talk about it. But there's a lot of companies that aren't there yet, but they need one. And the reason that they need one is because these baby tigers are the worst form of shadow IT. Anyone in the company can go and start using AI and amplify their productivity without anyone in the company knowing that that's happening. And while that is exciting, and people actually get excited, like the energy in a company shifts when people start using AI, whether it's intentional or not. But what happens when you harness that energy, when you give people who are side hustling AI in the company a platform to come together and think strategically about how to implement it, that's when big things start to happen. So last year we did this, and I will tell you, it starts very humbly. Honestly, it's usually with someone maybe like yourself who's going to raise your hand and be like, we should do this. And everyone's going to look at you and go, you shouldn't do this. This is dumb. I remember in January of last year, they told me, you can't sell generative AI projects. No one will buy them. And some of you I know, some of you don't know me, but when I hear no, like my GPT brain translates that into, let's go. Let me show you. Hold on 1 minute. And so I ended up getting in a room, a Zoom room or Teams or whatever, and I said to a bunch of people, you will not get paid for this, but for the next 4 weeks at 6 a.m., we're gonna hop on a call and I'm going to teach you what I know about generative AI. And this was January of last year. And the reason that's important is because I'm an MVP for Microsoft in AI, and I got invited to be part of the Microsoft Copilot during COVID. So back then, it wasn't called Copilot, but that it eventually became what is today known as ChatGPT, honestly. And so I was already working with it, and I actually didn't like it very much, but we can talk about that later. But the journey started with me just collecting enthusiasts in the company. Let's get together and learn this stuff. We, within 7 months, deployed 30 projects and made $300 million for the organization. Then they were like, maybe you could sell that stuff. I think you could sell it. It might be possible. I'm like, yeah, it might be. The CEO then gave us $3 billion over 3 years to grow that investment. But it started with that 40. What's different about the 40 people that I collected is that they were across 19 industries and every business function in the organization. Security was first, legal was second. People, basically, it's the reverse order that you would typically build a project.
Yep.
Like, who are the last people you want to talk to when you're trying to get something into production? Go to them first. And here's the cool thing, when you go to them first, they're going to be like, oh, you came to me before you went to your data scientist? Like, they'll cry tears of joy. And that's the energy you can build on. But it is, Sadie was talking about it too, culture and change. It's all about how are you going to get people who don't maybe want to do this to do it? And it starts really by creating relationships with people that you might not have talked to in the organization either ever or certainly very rarely.
Absolutely. I've seen the best one. So every time we go in to advise on centers of excellence at Align AI, the roles I specifically look for when we get there are, do you have representation from data science? Do you have representation from architecture? Do you have representation from data? Do you have legal? Do you have L&D and change management? How about your PMO? Because all of these people need to coordinate somehow, and I bet you don't want to do it. Finance, how are we going to get financial justification and start building really good financial models for these initiatives and calculating ROI? And security, because they will be a nightmare for you if you don't include them.
Yes.
To your point.
Yes.
So I look at that immediately, and if I don't see all of those people at the table, that is the very first thing we do. The second thing we do is we say, you define what their role is up front and get agreement from them. So security folks, your job is not to find the problems and then block me.
This is why you you friend them first.
That's right.
And bring candy.
Exactly. Your job is to advise me as a security expert on how we can de-risk this and how you can support this. And when you set that up front, of course you don't tell them what their job is because it has to be their idea, it's a whole thing. But if you set that up front, it actually makes your life so much easier.
Yes.
So in terms of interacting with these different groups, what are the types of questions that you hear these teams discuss or structure? Is it just we meet every Tuesday and we hang out for an hour? Like, what does this look like?
Yeah, I think in the best case, oftentimes when you bring this team together, they've never been together before, ever. And this is in the biggest brands in the world. Their CMO has never been in the same room as the head of technology, the head of marketing, and the head of procurement. Like they just have never had a reason to sit together. So I learned this skill actually at Microsoft. I ended up going to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and doing a data science project with the curators there. And it was a hackathon. And so we brought in like 9 curators and 9 data scientists from MIT. And it was an awkward high school dance. Like nobody wanted to talk to anybody. They were kind of like on their own. They all already presumed they weren't going to play well together. So the first day of that hackathon, which is the same thing I see modeled in these executive workshops, the first day is them kind of in their box going, I don't really need this if they're on the tech, like non-tech side, or they really need this and I've already built it out in my mind and I know exactly what we're going to do. I just need them to say yes, is the tech side. And so I end up not talking about tech at all, usually in those first couple of hours. It's more about pain. And so the number one question we ask, usually of the business, not of the technologists, is unless, of course, like you're a technology, if you're building software as a company, like then this is another line of business for you. But you go to your line of business and you ask them, what hurts you? Like, what do you think you get paid too much to deal with every day? Everyone has stuff. Sadie also talked about this. There was a wonderful work trend analysis done by Microsoft and LinkedIn, which they have great data from what we do in our work, our Microsoft Office tool set. But they have data that shows that many of us are frustrated for 35 to 40% of our day with things that we don't think we should have to do. We've all had that thought, like there should be an app for this, or oh my gosh, this app is so old, or when was this made in 1982? Like there's all of this friction in our work that it basically takes away from the ability for us to create value. So that's what we ask. And I always tell people, I remember during, when Alexa launched, it was 2014, and I had my third, I have 6 kiddos. So I had my third child, and my third child was born, and then Alexa launched on that Friday. So I was not a good work-life balance example. So talk to me after. Don't at me about it, though. But I was working, I was launching a product, and then my dad got hit by a car 3 weeks after that. So now I've got an infant in the intensive care unit on my phone with my product team. It's not good. And people would ask me when I was on the phone or in a call, they'd be like, how's it going, Noelle? And I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm fine. It's fine. It's fine. It was not fine at all. But that's what people say when you ask them what hurts them. In these executive rooms, everyone's like, yeah, I'm good. I got this. I got the team. I got the tech. I got the data. On the surface, they have it all. But what happens, and this happened to me when I was on Alexa, somebody stopped and they pulled me aside and they put their hand on my shoulder and they're like, no, really, Noelle, like, how's it going? I know you've got a lot going on. I know you have now 3 children. Like, how's it going? And I'm like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and I like unleashed all the things. And that's exactly what happened at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Once we built that trust, they unleashed like 19 use cases in 15 seconds. Like, you could do this, and oh my gosh, if you really, but they have to trust you first. And so that room, the first question is, yes, how are you doing? What hurts you? But the answers you get are much richer when you've built that trusted relationship, which is why I go after the hard audiences first, the security teams and the legal teams that don't get a lot of love. Because once you build trust with them, they have so much that they're like, oh my gosh, we could change the business. And they are a huge ally, I think, in doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Trust is so key, and I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see these COEs do is they say, well, we're going to go out and just collect a bunch of use cases across the enterprise. So what do? They send emails and they say, give me your best AI use cases to people who have never touched AI, never talked about AI, don't know what an AI use case looks like, and then they get poor response back. They try to shove all of these things in an Excel sheet. They try to interpret or extrapolate what all these use cases might mean.
Yep.
And what risks might exist. They're not talking to the business. They're not sitting down with them. They didn't educate them. They didn't spend time with them. And it's because you're like, well, I've been told to go collect 400 use cases from across the enterprise.
Oh my gosh, so I remember last year in March, it took us 2 months to develop a policy at Accenture around generative AI. So, it happened in November, and most companies went through this phase where we're like, okay, so do we lock it down? What do we do? Anyway, it took us 2 months to get the CTO to write this policy. When that policy came out, and I don't advise anybody to do this, the CTO wrote into an email, very similarly, we are going to get involved in this technology. We would love for you to all be involved, 750,000 of you to be involved. And here are the 3 individual email addresses you can reach out to with your ideas. And my life was like over at that point. I think I got 4,500 emails a day for 2 months straight. And my executive assistant literally quit. Said, I have never worked with anything like this before. She was like in her 60s, so she was fine quitting, I think. But she was like, she literally, what's the word? Like, she escalated on me. And she was like, this is not normal. You can't do this. You can't have this much coming into a single person's inbox. And what I realized in that moment was I was like, the good news is that we let the company know we wanted to hear from them. The bad news is we created a policy which told them they can't use AI, by the way, and then said, but if you have ideas for it, we'll do it for you. And in my mind, that's not a great model. It ends up creating a bit of this fiefdom model. And that's the danger with COEs, is that you create a COE and these people are empowered, but you want to empower your entire workforce. And that takes a bit of planning and careful, community development. I don't know if you've heard of this term, communities of practice, communities of interest. It's important to feed everyone on the maturity curve through the organization, because everyone's going to want to play, especially when ChatGPT came out. Like, people were at home taking pictures of their pantry and feeding it into, computer vision models and asking it to create toddler menus for themselves. Like, they're already using it at home. So how do you harness that safely, I think, became a really big challenge for us. We went from 40 people in the COE to 1,600 in a month. And then we created an experts in generative AI list. Oh, no. And I was like, granted, I felt like I was part of the, I was 792nd. As an expert, and I was like, I don't care about that fact, but I just realized people became talkers and not doers. And so those practice communities became something I'm so very passionate about. It's why I started my own community. I have an institute, and a leadership institute. All we do are live learning labs. Because I'm like, I don't want you to go out and say it's a good idea. I don't want you to go out and say, I can help in this community. I want you to be like, oh yeah, I built a model, and it was a disaster. Maybe it worked, but likely it'll be a disaster. But you can't really participate in these experiences and these conversations without practical skills. And I say I go from the boardroom to the whiteboard to the keyboard. Everyone has to have this skill set because it's only communication. You just have to talk to your tech. Everyone can play. But because everyone can play, you have to be really careful with how you develop it, I think.
For sure. And I think on top of that, too, one thing we usually advise on is creating cohorts.
Yes.
So purpose-built cohorts. Who's in it? Why are they in it together? Why them? How big should they be? What objectives do we have for these cohorts? And I would highly recommend against picking job function families, because my experience has been, you go into some of these companies, and if you truly want no one to be left behind, which I think is a great philosophy to have in this, is you got to find people who are going to learn from each other and also not feel intimidated by it. You know, you have some folks who are even just struggling with digital literacy. If they can't figure out how to open Microsoft Word online, how do you expect them to use Microsoft Copilot?
100%.
And then you've got these people who are tasked with, well, now we have all these Copilot licenses. I have 600 of them, and I need to roll them out to all these people, and I'm just going to give people access. It's like, oh, no. No.
I mean, so at Accenture, we ended up rolling out Copilot to 70 executives, and we did a survey 3 weeks in, and those executives were like, this is kind of garbage.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really need this.
Yeah.
And I, of course, was like, oh,
Right.
no, what? Like, this is amazing. And I realized in that exercise something that I've heard echoed throughout the conference, like, you have to learn how to do this. And the funny thing is the skill you need most in the world of generative AI is clarity of thought. Like the ability to think clearly about what you want and articulate that clearly with human language. And guess what? We are like literally in the space of like all of the people in the world that do work, we're the ones least often communicating with human voices, with each other. As a technology industry, as a data industry, we tend to be pretty quiet. We don't have a lot of practice or commitment professionally to learning how to communicate. Soft skills, we call them soft. It's literally the skill that makes models better.
For sure.
It becomes a real challenge now, I think.
Well, it's really funny, too, because I love diving into the technical details as much as the next person, and I know you do, too. And when we host this event, we think really deeply about the topics we cover. And I know we talk about change management culture a lot here. And it's because that is the thing that blocks it. Like, I love talking about infrastructure, I love talking about data, I love talking about modeling techniques, and we pepper those in as much as we can here, for sure. But like, I think it's so hard, and maybe you're not into it, but I agree, it's like, this is the problem. This is the crux of it.
Yep.
Trying to get people to participate. Now, I'm gonna steal something that Sadie was talking about last session, because I loved it. When you were talking about roads and stop signs, and you mentioned on policies, I see this being a huge issue. You got these COEs who create policy documents and email them out to people as if that is going to be the number one thing you read in the morning is an AI policy from your company coming into your inbox. Also has nothing to do with anything you're going to do that day. And so that is another huge mistake. And what I've said with Copilot, even though I've gotten the same complaints from a lot of people on usability for some of it, is that use this to cut your teeth on AI. Roll the policies out alongside a tool that they're going to go use. Embed this into the rollout plan. Build your policy, fine, but pepper it into the whole experience that they get on using AI at your organization. And then the next time you decide to build something internally, you'll be like, same thing as that Copilot exercise we just did, except XYZ.
Yes.
And so I've seen that be a really great, and it's great for Microsoft too, because they're making a lot of money off of it.
Yeah.
But
I actually, the key I think we learned, and we did end up re-rolling it out, and the executives there are now very happy with it. But the key was that it's not intuitive. People think that if you just talk to it, it'll do what you want, and they don't realize that there is an art to talking to machines.
Yeah.
There is a process of figuring out how to use like a chain of thought to teach a machine. Like I always say, pet owners, parents, caregivers, we're like the best prompt engineers because we know how to keep changing, like asking for the same thing in 80 different ways until you're like, okay, now you get it. Okay, great, thanks. And we're not well, okay, I shouldn't say that. We're sometimes not frustrated by that process, but we realize it's a necessary process to get the right outcome, and we're willing to wait for that outcome. Like me and my dad, or me and my children. Like I'm not going to be like, you can figure out the walking thing. You're 8 months old. Like I'm done with you then. I'm like, no, I'm going to just be like, I know I told you this 1,000 times, but I'm going to tell you again, you should hold on to stuff. You're not ready for that yet. But that's the ideas that I think we do need to realize that education is required. Thank you, Sadie, for saying that to everyone, because there's a reason that educators, teachers are the lowest paid profession in the world, but it is the critical skill that allows us not to build big tigers that eat everybody. Like, we're going to have to figure out how do we learn this tool to use it successfully. And I think education has to roll out. So to your point, having Copilot, yes, 100% agree, but we do need to teach people how to even use Copilot. And I think a lot of us technologists are like, I did this. I'm like, it's Copilot, buddy, figure it out.
Right.
But again, we're in this like a bit of an echo chamber where we've been using a lot of this technology inherently, and most of the world doesn't realize they rabbit hole by accident into these systems that
For sure.
don't
Yeah.
operate. Yeah.
And I think it's a mindset shift. Like when we get on with folks to teach them some of this stuff, we're like, it's not going to work a lot of the time. And you just let them know up front, here's what to expect. Because I feel like people aren't setting those expectations, and then people get really disappointed, or they don't see the bigger picture, so tying in the bigger picture. So we talked a lot about kind of adoption, enablement. We talked about the structure of a COE. We touched a little bit on policies. I'd like to maybe talk to you a little bit more about risk and legal, you had mentioned, and their role. So what are the types of things you're hearing from them in these discussions?
Yeah, so one of the first things that we ended up doing was creating a Word doc that documented all of the use cases that legal was approving, and it became known as the red, yellow, green list. And green, and this was back when these models were very immature compared to what they are now. So we had, Dolly was red. Because there was all of this litigation happening in the legal system around who was training Dolly and where did that art come from, but all the text use cases were green, and then we had code come in, and then all of a sudden code became yellow, but legal was the one that ultimately had to review every single use case, and that's again why I wanted them to be part of the process first, because I don't want to create policy for policy's sake. And it should be just like your presentation, Sadie, today was so great, because I'm one of those people also. I'm not just saying this. I'm saying this because we have this data that shows why this is a thing we should think about. And policies are the same way. I mean, the government runs this way, kind of. Sometimes I won't get into that. But ideally, you create policy out of precedent. And that precedent only comes in AI out of research. So you will have to do one of two things. As a legal team, you'll have to partner with research in order to be able to validate the policies that you're building, or you'll have to be like Accenture did at the end of the year. They created an internal research organization, which is awesome. Good. I'm not an internal researcher, but I love those people. They're awesome. But you need some way to validate it. And the government's doing this right now. The EU Act, of course, has, thank goodness, pushed us all, like GDPR. They're good people. If any EU people here, thank you for being here. But they pushed the American government, our federal government, to make some pretty strict rules and policies. But those policies didn't come from, it's the most expensive policy document ever written. So I encourage you to read it, because it's great advice on how you should build some of these systems. And they talk about chief AI officer, they talk about the building of the community, but policy should be data-driven. And the data can come from taking some of these research groups, putting them in a pod, like you said, one of these smaller communities, letting them play and build out, and use that data to say, wow, we don't want that to happen at scale. And that's kind of what we did, and it ended up working really well. But creating that central location, and also using the COE as a central force to say every use case must come through the COE, that's what we ended up doing at first. As a result of that level of strictness, within 8 months it was disbanded. So the whole COE got reorged. And that's because it created this kind of toxic echo chamber of people who all of a sudden became, no, I don't. Oh, sure. Oh, you brought me candy? Okay. I'll do yours. And it became really, really toxic, actually. And so be careful in how you build these things. I was recently in a company, they were doing crop pollution reduction or something crazy that I'm not an expert in. But they wanted to build an AI system. And they decided that, I mean, their policy in the company was not to use generative AI at all. And they decided that they wanted to build an AI system. So they ended up building a system, a semantic search system, actually, with no generative AI at all. But it does a lot of the same stuff. But the challenge they ran into was that their security team, to your point earlier, was not involved at all. And so they created a system that was super helpful to the organization. They had beta testers who said it was super helpful, but it was like an antibody. I don't know if you know a little bit about these antibodies, but if not done accurately, the organism will attack the thing that could be most helpful. And so that organization was destroyed, unfortunately. They were building a good thing, but they just didn't do it in the right way. And the system, and again, it goes down to organizational change. They ate that business because they didn't play well with others. And it was really sad because I was like, God, that was a good project. That would have saved a lot of farmers a lot of time. But it won't see the light of day because they couldn't get through the groups.
And then unfortunately, because we're humans, once that's set,
100%.
people don't like you anymore.
I know. I'm like, oh
and
no,
they'll
you guys
block
have to
your
go work
stuff.
somewhere else.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a tough game to play. With security, what we've tried doing is presenting tools to them. So I find that a lot of people they fear things they don't know. Why take risk for the sake of taking risk?
Yes.
Right? So if I can give you some tools and you're afraid of PII getting leaked, great. There's a lot of tools out there that can help redact PII from data. Let me show you what they are. Let me show you how they work. Right? So there's just an opportunity to say, why are you saying no? Why is this a risk? How can I present some information to you to help you with that? Same thing with legal. Mm-hmm. Now, the hard thing about legal is there's still a lot that hasn't been figured out yet. We're still talking about copyright. There's not an answer to that yet. And we work with an AI law firm, and they don't have an answer to that yet. There's no precedent set yet on that, right? And so that's still to be determined. And so people are kind of avoiding some of those risky areas because there really isn't a lot of guidance. Now, we can anticipate where it might go and try to work around that, but that seems risky to a lot of people. So I think just providing information and tools can be very helpful for these groups. And I think you're right. Like, is this group's function to decide which use cases we work on? Do we get to prioritize it? Is it a democracy? Right. Is it not? Like, how are we going to do that and defining that? Because typically that's not thought through. Before we conclude, because I know we're running out of time and I don't want to stand in between people and dogs, which I heard barking during our session. You're wearing a cool pin. Why don't you tell everybody about your pin?
So yes, did the AI pin. I was an early investor in the AI, in Humane's AI organization. I'll tell you, fun fact, the reason why is because I saw their product demo and a male was talking to the device. And being at Alexa, I remember, I don't know if you know this, but women yell at Alexa at a significantly higher rate than men do. And there's a reason for that, because the data that was collected wasn't uniquely female in any way. So as a result, which is sad. So hopefully now if you're a woman and you yell at Alexa, you feel like, all right, well, at least there's a reason, because there is a reason. But I saw this guy demoing this, and there was a woman in the frame, and she never spoke to the device. And I was like, uh-oh, this is bad. I know why you're not talking to it, because it doesn't work for you. You're going to yell at your shoulder, like, all day. So I got involved early, and it was a bit of a disaster. I don't know if you've been watching the Humane's journey. But all products are a bit of a disaster when they launch. The difference is now we have social media that lets everyone know what your V1 looks like, which is kind of sad, actually. Because really good things will die too early because everyone's like, wow, that's a piece of junk. Don't use that. I remember when I first got it. So the purpose of this device is it's a voice-enabled device, but it also has a really cool feature, which I'm happy to show you guys later, a laser menu. So when you hold up your hand, you have to tap it to wake it up, just like you'd have to say Alexa to wake up an Alexa device. You tap it to wake it up, and it uses computer vision to recognize your hand, and it puts a menu on your hand, and you use gestures, which I don't know how many of you have an Apple Watch, but it's the same type of gestures Apple's been training us on. And you use pinching and hand waving in order to control the menu, and you can see messages. I can take a picture of you all. Oh my gosh, I'm totally doing that. Take a picture.
Smile.
Right? And now if I hold up my hand, it'll put the picture on my hand and I can see what it looks like, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
What I love about it, though, is the accessibility it offers. So yesterday, I got dressed for a different conference. I was in San Francisco yesterday, and I went in front of the mirror and I just said, do I look appropriate for a business conference in San Francisco? And I took a picture in front of a long mirror, and it said, kind of funny, yeah, you're wearing a dark blue blazer, which matches well with your T-shirt, and it's a good thing because it dresses up the T-shirt that you're wearing. And I was like,
Oh.
thank you. I was like, that wasn't. I mean, maybe it was a little judgmental, but thank you. It didn't say anything about my shoes. It didn't tell. Like today, I did the same thing. It didn't say, "Wow, those shoes are not practical for a Columbus." But good, I'm glad it didn't because it empowered me. But what I'm thinking about is like my son. My son doesn't have a lot of, I have a son with Down syndrome, and he doesn't have a lot of sensory awareness around his face. So sometimes he'll walk around and he'll have peanut butter or something, and he can take a picture of himself in the bathroom and be like, do I look all right? And the computer vision model will just tell him, you have peanut butter on your face. If you're in front of a building and you don't really know if you're supposed to, like if this is the one to walk in, I did this yesterday, and actually I did it yesterday to see if it recognized Nationwide's building. And it says, oh yeah, Nationwide building, it's the one with the blue overpass walkway. And I was like, yeah, yes, it does have a blue over. That's cool. And so thinking beyond just, is it a cool tech gadget that I wear? I have people in my life, like my dad, that they can't. My dad has a traumatic brain injury. He doesn't use a computer anymore. He only uses Fire TV and Alexa in his room. And now he has a pin that he can ask questions to. And you'd be surprised what he asks. Like, is that Harrison Ford I'm looking at on the screen? And he'd be like, no, that's Ryan Reynolds. I'm like, that's pretty cool.
That's
so
great.
I see it as a way of using AI to increase accessibility of technology, but it's also a really cool, gadget. And I like the first week I had it, it overheated twice on my shirt. And the device was like, I'm overheating and turning off now. Sorry, bye. And I was like, oh, this is bad. But they are updated, and it doesn't do that anymore. So feel free to get your own.
So I notice we're out of time. I know you love to take selfies on stage. If everyone could stand up and kind of come closer, we're going to take a quick picture.
Let's do it.
And then we're going to
Come
go
on,
into
friends.
break. And we'll be back here for another great session. If you want to be in the picture.
Yes. If you are like a CISO or in security and don't want your face on the interwebs, just look away. That's fine.
Look away. We'll tell AI to blur you.
Yeah. All right, come on in. I'll wait for you. Don't worry. Oh, wait,
We got the tiger.
We got to put it this way. Like, who are you looking at? Are you ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.